The provision chain disruption is inducing a lot of the inflation we perceive, and everyone's like, hold on a moment. Why are you discussing deflation? That's forthcoming. People are unprepared for it. I acknowledge the inflation is here. I purchase gasoline. I shop in the grocery store. I comprehend it, and it's persistent. It's not fleeting. I grasp all that. But inflation has two principal sources. One is the supply side, which is labeled cost-push inflation. So that's energy price jolts, fertilizer scarcity, strategic metal shortages, component suppliers who can't deliver stuff to factories in Germany, and they're shutting down, etc. The other cause is from the demand side, and that's named demand-pull inflation. Essentially, psychological, consumers pull demand forward. They're like, hey, I was contemplating buying a refrigerator. I better buy it today because the price is going to go up in 6 months. In the 70s, we had both. It commenced with cost push due to the Arab oil embargo, but it concluded as demand pull. I was initiating my career at the time. Your boss would just give you a raise. You didn't even have to ask. Inflation was surging so rapidly, like, I better give this guy a raise, here's another $30,000 or whatever. Because people would quit, and that kind of spiraled out of control until Volcker subdued it. All right. Now, we do not have demand pull inflation. We do have cost push inflation. The distinction is highly significant because cost push inflation on the supply side becomes tangible. Prices go up, but it's self-canceling. The old saying that the remedy for higher oil prices is higher oil prices, because when they get too high, people stop driving. They shut down various activities. By the way, if you're jobless, you're not buying any gasoline because you're not going anywhere. I mean, that's kind of an unpleasant way of putting it. But that's how cost-push inflation tips into a recession, and then prices come down. We witnessed that in 1974. You had Jerry Ford and Alan Greenspan walking around with these win buttons, WIN, with super whip inflation. Now, except we had a recession, and prices collapsed. Now, it came back by 77 for a lot of reasons, but right now we don't have demand pull. We have cost push. It will dissipate when this economy goes into recession. And then we're going to be discussing disinflation and deflation, which are somewhat similar, and the Fed's going to be out on a limb as usual, raising rates in the face of a recession and a price collapse. I don't know what the recession is the cure for. It's coming. I mean, recession is coming. And JPAL said this. JPAL gave 2 speeches, August 26, Jackson Hole, and September 21, at the press conference after the FOMC meeting that day. And the September 21 speech was almost like, well, just in case you weren't listening to me in Jackson Hole, let me tell you again what's happening then. Jackson Hole. He was like Nancy Pelosi. He tore up a speech and wrote a new one, like literally the day before. It was 3 or 4 pages. It was really short. He used the word pain 3 times in one paragraph. I've been following Fed news for 45 years. I've never seen the word pain ever, but he basically said the same thing. But September 21, he was even more candid. He said there's going to be a recession. It's going to be bad. Unemployment is going to go up. Get it straight. These things are going to happen. And that's what it's going to take to get inflation under control. But he went on and on about how inflation was job one, because the Fed has this dual mandate which never made sense. But it's the law. I mean, Humphrey Hawkins, the dual mandate is price stability and low unemployment. Those two things don't always go together, and sometimes you got to make trade-offs between the two. But right now, the trade-off is very easy, which is unemployment is really low. Now, I don't put much weight on it, but the Fed does. Again, put your Fed hat on. Unemployment is really low. If unemployment went from 3 I think it's at 3.5 at the moment. If it went to 4.5, 4.9, is that the end of the world? Well, that was considered pretty low in 2013 when they were doing QE4 or whatever, so they're willing to do that. And they also think the recession, if it comes, will be mild. But those two things together will get inflation under control. And what Powell said, he didn't say that their target is core PCE, personal consumption expenditure, price index, core meaning excluding food and energy. And everyone's like, why would you exclude food and energy? Again, I'm not here to debate it. That's what they do. So they want to get core PCE over the year to 2%. Powell did not say we're going to raise rates until core PCE is 2%. He didn't say that. What he said was, we're going to raise rates until it's acting in a restrictive way on inflation. And inflation will come down on its own because rates will be high enough to cause that, at which point we, the Fed, will pause. And you say, well, when are you going to cut rates? He was like, the pause could be a year. So forget this Fed pivot nonsense you're talking. 2024, if then before they cut rates. It's like, I remember in Vietnam, Neil saying we had to destroy the village to save it. Hey, we have to destroy the economy to save it. This is the latest and long string of Fed blunders since 1913. Seems to be their specialty. But that's what they're doing. And then beyond all that there is a brewing global liquidity crisis, a global financial crisis that's different from a recession. Financial panics and recessions are two different things. They can come separately. In 1998, we had a financial panic, but there was no recession. In 1990s, we had a recession, but there was no financial panic. In 2008, we had both. They can come together. It looks like they might be coming together again. This is revealed in inverted yield curves. Major dealers are bidding at auctions for treasury bills. The Fed will give you treasury bills with a phone call. All you have to do is call the Fed and do a reverse repo with the Fed. They'll give you some treasury bills. But the banks are bidding at auction for treasury bills. That yields maturity lower than what the Fed will give you for a phone call. Why would you do that? The answer is the Fed bills cannot be rehypothecated. They cannot be used as collateral, but the auction bills can. So what that tells you is there's a collateral shortage. That means deleveraging balance sheets. It means financial distress. We also see it not just in the treasury yield curve.